Good morning. As I was telling Steve earlier this morning, since he was driving in from Manhattan and coming through rain, he said, Hayes looks so wonderful. It's so green. And I said, well, we always have that 10 to 15 minute shower every day like they do in the mountains. And you were lucky enough to come through that, Steve. So we're glad you're here. We're here to recognize a very special guy and a very special passion for Fort Hays State. And we're very grateful for that. And to start things off, we'll start with our president, Dr. Martin.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so very much for you all being here, especially as Tim said, because of the rain, and I take all the credit for it. Since I came to Fort Hays State University a year ago, it's been raining. Everybody kept saying we're in a drought, and there's no drought in heavens lately here in Hays. So thank you so very much for joining us today. I had the privilege to meet Steve about 6, 7, 8 months ago. And he and I form a special friendship immediately. We have a lot in common. Our backgrounds, our love for our grandparents and the care of the elderly and making sure that they are properly treated with the respect and the admiration that they deserve for having lived as long as they have. And regrettably, that's not necessarily always the case, but he has made it his life dream and actually his life purpose to make sure that they receive the care and the respect that they do. And so I'm very thankful for that. But it's people like him that is what Fort Hays State University is all about. And it's why Fort Hays State University is a destination of choice for students, for faculty, for staff, because people come here because they care. People come here because they care enough to give back to others. People come here because they want to look after the next generation of leaders. And that's what Steve is doing. And he represents the very best of philanthropists because he gives from the heart. He gives to others so that they don't lack what he lacked when he was growing up. And so I'm so very thankful that he has placed his heart at Fort Hays State University so that the next generation of leaders can go on and make a difference in the world and pass it forward and improve the human condition. So on behalf of the faculty and the staff and the students of Fort Hays State University who you will be impacting now and forever, please accept our greatest and deepest gratitude. Thank you all for coming.
The impact of Steve's gifts, it's all about the students and what will happen for them currently and in the future. And we'd be remiss if we didn't have the opportunity to have a student step forward and say a few things. Brandon Taylor is a graduate student from Greensburg, currently pursuing his MBA. He's an active brother in the Sigma Phi Epsilon fraternity. He is the SGA treasurer. He's the brother in the Zeta Phi chapter of Alpha Kappa Psi Professional Business Fraternity, serving as the VP of Fundraising. We like that. He's a member of the Honor Society, National Society of Collegiate Scholars, Tigers in Service, Up Till Dawn. He serves on the College Business and Entrepreneurship Student Advisory Council and the Memorial Union Policy Board. He's a busy guy. So Brandon, if you'd like to step forward.
Well, thank you, Tim. I'd like to thank the Foundation for asking me to come and say a few words here today on behalf of the students. I consider it an honor and privilege to have experienced FHSU as a student. It means a lot to me and has given more to me than I ever could have imagined coming in the fall of 2011. I recently graduated, like Tim said, with my undergrad in management and I'm currently working on my MBA here as well. But none of this would have been possible without individuals like Steve. Steve was instrumental in bringing Sigma Phi Epsilon back to the campus, which led to the eventual rechartering last spring. His students' leadership and dedication and his investment in my fellow brothers that will continue to instill in these young men the SIGEP values of virtue, diligence, and brotherly love. On behalf of the students in SIGEP, I'd like to thank Steve for his generosity towards the university and the Kansas Zeta chapter of Sigma Phi Epsilon, which I'm now an alum. Through the countless efforts of people like Steve, students are able to continue to finance their education and obtain a degree that they can be proud of. During my time at FHSU, I received more than $8,000 in scholarships because of individuals like Steve that invested in my future. Steve's gift will touch all brothers and facets of SIGEP, including freshman and current member scholarships, career workshops, leadership conferences, and will be an important part in building the SIGEP house on the campus of FHSU. Investing in a student's future lays the groundwork for what will become our next generation of world leaders. Speaking on behalf of the student body, Steve, we thank you. FHSU is growing, and the possibilities are endless in the direction we are headed. And I'm excited to just continue my education here. Thank you, Steve, and go Tigers.
Steve's gift is going to impact in a broad way, which is very unique and wonderful. Not only is he supporting his brothers and the SIGEPs, but he is going to support the nursing program here at Fort Hays State and also the arts, his love for the arts. With that, I'm going to bring Dr. Briggs here, who has served as a dean of the College of Health and Life Sciences since 2005. He has his bachelor's degree from Fort Hays in '83, his master's in '84. He began teaching as a graduate assistant in '83 and '84, was a coach here, a student athlete here. I don't know of anybody that may be more black and gold than Dr. Briggs. And he came back to Fort Hays State in '98 as the chair and associate professor in the Department of Health and Human Performances. So Dr. Briggs, if you would come forward.
Thank you, Tim. It's my pleasure to be able to represent the College of Health and Life Sciences, actually recently renamed the College of Health and Behavioral Sciences, and be able to serve as the dean of that fine group, and today be able to represent the Department of Nursing in accepting this wonderful gift from Steve Shields. Steve's career has been defined by his caring about the well-being of others, and his passion for the elderly is prevalent in all that he does. If you've ever had a conversation with Steve or had the opportunity to see him speak, his passion is evident. We've been fortunate on this campus to have him speak to groups of students and faculty in our college and actually campus-wide, and we come away impressed every time. The typical comment is, somebody's going to cry. In most cases, it's me, and then actually, and also Steve as well. So there's never a dry eye in the house when you hear Steve talk about his passion for his work with the elderly. This generous gift will allow us to build out our simulation experiences in the Department of Nursing, and with a special emphasis on developing simulation space dedicated to developing the skills and competencies in dealing with older adults. Simulation is an important part of educating our healthcare professionals, and especially in the Department of Nursing, and our ability to develop these skills in a controlled environment is critical as these students develop the skills and competencies in working with elderly in multiple settings. So our ability to expand simulation in this regard is truly fantastic. We're appreciative that Steve has been so supportive of Fort Hays State University, and this gift will benefit our students, our faculty, and all the individuals that they will serve in a healthcare environment. So, Steve, thank you. We really appreciate your generosity.
You know, this may be the opportunity for me to introduce Steve is probably something as a nightmare for Steve. I've known Steve a long, long time, and in fact, he was one of the very first individuals that I went to when I was considering coming here to Fort Hays 9 years ago. And Steve said, you know, Tim, if you want to do that and you want to make a difference, you will. And I think that was great advice from a guy that lived and continues to live by those same words. Make a commitment to make a change, and you will. So thank you, Steve, for that advice to me. And it's great for me to be able to say thank you for what you're doing for Fort Hays State, not only in a broad scope for students today, but those tomorrow. It's fantastic. The ultimate gift that you will provide and the current gift that you are providing is going to make a difference. Steve has a true love for the arts as well. you ought to ask him to sit behind a piano sometime and play a song. He's very talented in that way. He's a fantastic art collector, and I do have some interest in that area as well. So we've had long conversations about those types of interests. In fact, Steve came to me several years ago and said, Tim, it would really be nice for us to document the history of key leaders here at Fort Hays State through portraiture work. And he commissioned the portrait of Dr. Hammond that currently hangs in the Union. And there's a portrait underway now of Dr. Martin. So I think it's fantastic that Steve is such a broad-scoped personality. His sense of humor, his articulate words, which you'll soon hear, can really change lives for students. He travels all over the world speaking. He's a noted author. He's just a very, very nice person that decided to make a change based on a personal experience that he had. And now that he's expressing that and moving that forward to Tigerland, we're going to be the beneficiaries of that for a long, long time. So Steve, if you'd please come forward.
Well, I feel kind of special if I believe half of that. I am really pleased to have rekindled the relationship with Fort Hays that I enjoyed in the 70s. And I remember once when I first got involved, and I said, well, I didn't graduate from here. I attended 2 years, and all the beer and polka dancing, I had to make a change. And no, seriously, those 2 years that I spent here were just absolutely formative in my development. And while I didn't graduate here, because I ended up going overseas and having a really large time for quite a long time, and didn't finish until I was well into my 30s. I was a non-traditional student who couldn't afford to spend the money on college, not because I couldn't afford to pay it, but my opportunities just started presenting themselves to me early, and I followed them. There's something about Hays that hits me here, maybe because of the time of the life that I was here. It was a large time. But I don't think that's it. You guys, because I'm an entrepreneur, and I was always slow. I was slow to talk, slow to walk, slower in school, slow to graduate from college. I was 38. I was slow to become a successful entrepreneur. I didn't start my company till I was 54 years old. So I'm just slow. But as I began to rebuild my relationship with Fort Hays, because you invited me to, I saw something that relates to what the world is needing now and what it's not getting in a lot of academic environments. Academic environments, if I may be so bold, are becoming too sequestered and becoming increasingly irrelevant and laden with internal bureaucracies. And I have hired, I don't know how many students. I've hired hundreds and hundreds of college graduates in the last 20 years. And I have to spend way too much time readying them for the world. And I'm tired of doing it. It used to be you could tell a college person because they had graduated from one. And you can't tell anymore. You can't tell anymore. And they're not ready as they should be. And I don't think that's true here. You can taste it, you can feel it, you can smell it. And it's entrepreneurial, and it's not bureaucracy laden. And if the workforce, if the leaders of tomorrow are going to be what we really need them to be, because we need leaders now like we've never needed them, there's going to have to be more and more institutions of higher learning like Fort Hays State who is really world ready. That's not a tagline. That means the people that come out of here are ready for it. and have the social skills and the people skills and the technical skills and the readiness to be of service. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing here. For a quarter of a century, Ed set a tone of being nimble in ways that sometimes would set you back a bit. But he took Fort Hays, who was in the back seat, truly, and not dissatisfied with itself either, and moved it ahead where he became the envy of all the rest of the schools in the Regent system. And whenever you have a longtime leader who passes the gavel, I'm just going to be real candid here. There's always kind of a breath holding that takes place, like who's it going to be? And really, if you look back, whether it's a coach or a college president or whoever it is that's been an astounding leader, the survival rate and the quality of the person coming behind them, because they're in that shadow, usually the person behind doesn't last very long. And so I wondered. And then I met President Martin. You've got a dynamo in your hands here. And so this, instead of being in the shadow of something that was significant and someone who helped that become significant, she's got the self-security to build upon it. Not feel overshadowed, but build upon it with confidence. And she's got it. And here's what she's going to bring besides continuing the nimbleness, is if I go to an institution of higher learning to hear what they're going to, the value to bring, and I've been to quite a few of them, and I have a son in college, and hear that we're going to get your child ready to go get a good job, and we're competitive that way, I'm just going to puke. You know, what I want to hear, and what we're hearing from President Martin, is not just about the education, and it's not just about being world ready in terms of skills. It's about citizenship. It's about, in the tradition borrowed from the liberal arts education environment, this university will bring all the benefit of its world readiness and build into it, into its character, service readiness, citizenship readiness. And that is what these disparate things that I'm contributing to, the SIGEPs and nursing and art, what have they got to do with each other? They really are very connected. In fact, almost everything is connected. We just seem to have forgotten it. But the fraternity, which, you know, I'm a SIGEP, and I had way too much fun down here on 6th Street. But I learned about relationships with people that you make a joint commitment with in purpose. Some I have continued fast friendships with. Some I don't. Some I enjoyed more than others, but we were all bonded in a joint commitment, and we learned how to be integrity-filled in those relationships regardless of how much we felt in closeness. And we learned how to be joined by purpose in citizenship, even if we were 17 and 18 and 19 years old. And that needs to sustain. And that was a great fraternity on this campus. It had a great legacy, and there's absolutely no reason why it can't be moving forward and helping shape this century. So I support it. And I trust and hope that you're gonna, the seeds that you've laid as the refounding group, that you're going to make sure that that character that was always there in the legacy of this fraternity on this campus will not only be preserved, but it will be strengthened. And then nursing, you know, because that's about growing citizenship. It's about integrity of relationships. And nursing is about service. And I like the nursing department here. And I don't enjoy nursing departments very much. Because people who get called to be of service, because they have a feeling, and because they want to administer and heal, end up getting trained to be nurses. and the trainings and the realities of the environments that they work in are not similar to what called them. And we're helping change that in the long-term care sector and now in the hospital sector. And the nursing department here, like the rest of the campus, doesn't have that thickness of wall to penetrate, and there's an openness to what the world is changing to, and I want to support that. But finally, in the arts, and I've told the folks at the foundation, I've told Tim, you know, this one I'm going to have to die before you get it. Because in my legacy plans, a third of my estate is coming to Fort Hays to the art department. Do you know how good your art department is here? You leave everybody in the dust in the entire Midwest, but I think you're globally competitive. It's just nothing that's measuring that. And I think the quality of a society is not the economy alone. We spend way too much damn time talking about the economy. It's how much do we value the artists? How much do we value the poets? How much do we value the spiritual leaders? How much do we value literature? That's when we start getting into depth of quality of a society. And the fact that the art department at Fort Hays is like it is, and it is stellar, that's also a representation of the entire university, the dominance and the proper place of art within the balance of the rest of the elements is as it should be. It's as it should be in our lives. So my legacy gift here is to ensure that regardless of who's in the chair, regardless who has more vision or less vision in the year 2050 or 2075 or whenever it is, that there will be resources there that will bring leverage to those who have vision and will help it sustain during the periods when there might not be the vision there. So I leave it with pride, but hopefully you're not going to get it for a while. So thank you.
Now you know what I mean when we talk about passion and what comes from Steve. It all comes from his heart, and that's what's led him to where he is today. So on behalf of the foundation, the university, the students, the faculty, all of us here, Steve, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you will do in the future. And we hope it's a long, long time before we realize some of that. Because you're a special man and there's a lot of things that still need to be accomplished, and you're carrying that flag. And a lot of people are depending upon that. So thank you very much for all you do for us. Are there any questions from anyone before we adjourn here today? Thank you, Steve.